Post-apocalypse, wrapping up the rapture, next on Atheist Viewpoint. Hello and welcome to Atheist Viewpoint. I'm Dennis Horvitz.
And I'm Ron Barrier.
We're going to be discussing the post-apocalyptic period today. I don't know about you, but I actually was raptured.
Were you?
But I decided to come back.
I was drunk.
Ah! Well, you know, the weather was very nice, but you still had to wait in line for everything, you know, so I came back. I didn't care.
Well, we know that, of course, on one of the previous episodes that Harold Camping, a civil engineer who just became a preacher on the radio, you don't need any qualifications to do this.
You do not.
All you have to do is grab a Bible, tell people you're speaking of the Bible, and for some incredible reason, people start to listen to you and give you money. And he figured that out right away. And Mr. Camping was the one, of course, who predicted that the rapture would begin on May 21st. Mm-hmm. There would be a series of cataclysmic events leading up to the destruction of the world this coming October 21st, 2011. And of course, Dennis, we all know what happened.
Right. And depending on where you live, you're watching the show at least a month afterwards, probably longer. So
yeah, within a few weeks or so. But it's not the first time, of course, this guy has failed. This huckster did it again back in 1994. He failed. And, you know, maybe American Atheists is doing something wrong, Dennis, because here's a guy who failed with end-of-the-world predictions, and he's pulling in $100 million a year, $70 million a year. For what? Why are these people even giving him money?
Is there any, and is there any indication that prior to May 21st, 2011, that he gave away any of his possessions or his money in anticipation?
No, his answer was, and I can quote, why should I need a house to live in?
But if he expected to be,
then that's where if you look up huckster in the dictionary, you will find a picture of Harold Camping. No one should be giving this guy one thin dime. And we're gonna briefly go over a few articles that occurred at the time of the rapture. And I think one of the stories that came out was now of course I can't find it, was, can this bum, for lack of a better term, be sued? Can he be sued for
you know, I understand that there were a couple of cases where actually violence occurred. A mother slit the throat of her
3 kids.
Children. Fortunately, nobody died, and apparently they were all rescued before, you know, they were killed.
Right. And he's disassociating himself from the consequences of his rants. There was an article that came out, in fact, 4 days later. Of course, Camping himself, while counting his millions, was flabbergasted that the day came and went, nothing happened.
Well, you know, but
outside of the usual stuff that occurs around the world.
But you know that cliche that the best con man believes his own con.
Oh yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he, in some twisted way, really believes what he's saying. You know.
It's sad. Here's a California woman named Lynn Benedetto, one of the millions who heard Camping's message and became concerned that her daughters would suffer terribly in the coming apocalypse. So she forced her daughters, 11 and 14, to lie on a bed and then cut their throats with a box cutter. She then tried to kill herself, though police arrested her and all 3 survived. You know, when I read that paragraph, Dennis, it reminded me of the last person who actually succeeded and killing his family because he thought they'd be better off in heaven than on earth. And his name was John List, List.
Oh, yes, I
One of the
remember.
most notorious murderers in New Jersey.
Right.
You can look him up on the internet,
Right.
List. He killed his family
And
systematically.
and there was a 10-year manhunt on him, I think, wasn't there?
10 to 18.
Really, really.
Yes, about 18 years.
Right.
And he changed his identity. And the only reason that he was found is because his story was told on America's Most Wanted.
Right.
And within days.
A co-worker recognized him or something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
They got him, arrested him, and he died in prison. So if somebody, really says that they think heaven is better than earth, I think you should turn around and walk away from them. Or if they have children, keep an eye on the kids, because obviously the kids are in trouble. We have another case. An elderly man in Taiwan killed himself on May 5th ahead of the rapture by jumping out of a building. He had heard that doomsday was imminent and had taken recent earthquakes and tsunamis as early warning signs. Of course, earthquakes happen every year.
Right.
Tsunamis may happen in varying degrees every year.
And will continue to happen.
Yeah, because the earth is a vital living organism that is fluid. It compresses, it expands. The plates of the earth create heat and friction, and all of this has
Tectonic plates, right.
And all of this has an effect on the surface of the planet. You combine that, of course, with meteorological conditions. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Nature doesn't play favorites. Nature is rough.
Right.
All right, nature plays rough. It's not all cuddly and warm. That's for sure.
And well, this is the arrogance, though, that most I think most humanity, we human beings, we think we're the center of the universe. We think it all happens because and for us. Which
is how they started out in biblical times.
Right.
In the Dark Ages. The earth was the center of the universe.
And you can't blame them in those days for trying to supply an answer, that they didn't have.
Right.
But nowadays, in the age of really, really advanced science, and we know much, much more about the universe than we ever did. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, the more we know, the more questions are opening up, and that's a good thing.
That is a very good thing.
It's a great thing.
It's a very great thing, and we also realize now that we are not the center of the universe, but really a small, obscure planet circling an obscure sun,
medium-sized star
of the Milky Way galaxy, in
that's
out
right.
in the corner boondock somewhere.
Right, right.
The thing here, here's some more. One of the more famous people connected with the doomsday scenario was from Staten Island, and everybody's heard of this guy, Robert Fitzpatrick. He's the one who
yes.
Gave up his life savings of $140,000, of course, rather than giving it to people. If he really believed that this was going to be the end, instead of giving his money to people so they could have a pleasurable final week on Earth, no, he spends it not only on cartoon billboards going on the subways and the buses in New York City, but, as we find out later, to promote his book. That was he had a book called The Doomsday Code. He was doing this.
Now, see that? Actually, I guess I must be living in a cave because I didn't realize that he had a book.
Yeah, this is coming out afterwards. Now, this is how a true believer spent his last day, by his own words. All right? He visited his mother early in the afternoon on May 21st in a Staten Island, New York nursing home, thinking that would be the last time he would see her. Then, after he had a little lunch with her, he left and decided to go to Times Square to meet the media and to attract people to come. It was all about him. Now, what rational person would abandon their mother in a nursing home if you really believed it was doomsday? You should stay there with your mom. Unless, of course, there was money to be made.
Yeah. See,
I mean, that's how I would feel. The money and whatever attention he was getting is irrelevant. The world is ending in a few hours.
Yeah, it's actually it's very complicated. I mean, um, and it's, you know, he may be a huckster himself. I don't know. I kind of felt sorry for him when I first
No,
heard.
I think he's kind of duped.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very complicated thing because, you know, and you were talking to before about Harold Camping and what he's selling.
Mhm.
The problem is, number one, people like Harold Camping, but also these people couldn't get any traction if there wasn't the propensity to buy what they're selling in the first place. I mean, that's a major.
You know, ultimately, this guy was such a dupe to believe it, though. He was selling fear and stupidity and nothing else. Recently on CNN, in fact, this was June 1st at CNN, it turns out that the family of Eileen Hewwetter was shocked when they found out that their aunt left the majority of the family estate to Harold Camping and Family Radio.
Unreal.
And this was done about 2 weeks before the doomsday. Um, and it was $300,000 that she gave to Camping just before he died. And what's worse now is that this family has consulted lawyers, and
There's probably nothing they can do.
the lawyers agreed they really have no case.
No.
That she did it willingly and
Yep.
freely, you know. But
You want to shake these
she
people.
was swindled. I mean, we know.
Oh yeah. And
Now, why is it that if it involves religion, Dennis, it's not a swindle? And if it was any other product, it is a swindle.
yeah, very complicated.
You know?
I think. Very complicated.
I mean, I understand Camping has his free speech rights, but I think the Supreme Court has also said that free speech is limited, that you cannot yell fire in a theater.
Right.
And obviously, this guy did not yell fire in a theater. He yelled fire to the whole world to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, filling his coffers right up to the last minute.
You see, the thing is, it's highly unlikely that anything we say or anyone else says is going to make people drop this notion of a rapture.
No.
But I would think this, at least somebody could get the message across, that if somebody who predicts the rapture and they're not giving away their possessions or they're still accepting money, I would take it with maybe several truckloads of salt. You know.
I agree, because my first reaction is that those who were waiting for this and it didn't happen will somehow justify this event in their minds.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the people that, again, was in the papers was a fellow by the name of Keith Bauer, who drove his entire family in a minivan to from Maryland, 3,000 miles to California to park outside the Family Radio's offices. Okay?
Right.
I had some skepticism, and I'm quoting him now from Associated Press. I had some skepticism, but I was trying to push the skepticism away because I believe in God. So his reason for not being skeptical was his religious belief in God.
There's that need to believe. You know, the brain is wired for belief. You know.
But yet skepticism would have served him well. In fact, I think skepticism and doubt are two of the most powerful tools we have.
Right.
But here's a guy pushing it away. He said, I was hoping for it because I think heaven would be a lot better than this earth. Again, now I'm concerned about his family, that he's thinking he was really hoping for this. Not only the rapture, and we've repeated this before, but this lustful desire to see mayhem, suffering, and calamitous violence occur to those who don't agree.
Right. That's the subtext, I think. Not in everybody, but there is that feeling, I think.
I think it's there whether they want to believe it or not.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's that subtext well, it's like when they say atheists are going to go to hell. They think we deserve to be punished because we will not reinforce their superstition.
Well, of course, We both know that's idiotic because there is no hell.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, there is no afterlife. Again, with Stephen Hawking, and I think that was the best quote ever, was the afterlife is for those people who are afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And yet they say we're blind or we're in darkness. They're the ones that are afraid of the dark. This guy believes in God, so he drives his family, and he thinks heaven is a lot better than this earth. Well, you know, if he does, go. What's stopping him?
Yeah. Well, at least
is the rule against suicide?
yeah.
I don't even know if that's Protestant. I know it's Catholic.
I would think certainly the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there are proscriptions against suicide. I don't know how Christian. I mean, it's the thing is we just don't have the time or the you know, the facilities to kind of really probe this in depth. This is one of those things that would take a series of shows in succession. And
really to probe it in depth.
Yeah, to probe it in depth, to bring in guests in.
Here's Michael Garcia, who's the Family Radio Special Projects Coordinator. God's going to bring it. When you say something and it doesn't happen, your pride is hurt. But who needs pride? God says he resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. So again, a justification.
Well, it's,
some,
you know,
nincompoopy way.
Whatever it is, it's going to be justified. It's self-justifying, sure.
Yeah. And of course, those religious leaders who disagree with camping are just as irrational by saying, of course, the Bible says only God knows.
Right, no one knows the hour.
The hour, the day, or whatever. Not even the sun.
Right.
Not even Jesus knows.
Right.
You know, of course, I guess for the Catholic faith, that would be some sort of conflict because they believe in the triune God.
Yes.
So if they're all the same person, I would think it's kind of hard to prevent the thought of one of the three in one not entering the mind of the second of the three in one.
Well, you know, there is such a thing as social Trinitarianism.
How is that?
And anti-social Trinitarianism. Social Trinitarianism is the emphasis on the three natures of God, and anti-social Trinitarianism means the three personalities aren't speaking to each other. No, seriously. Anti-social Trinitarianism is the emphasis on the unity of God. But lest you drop everything and run in either of those directions, the danger of emphasizing the three personalities of God is, of course, you get tritheism, which is the belief in three gods. And of course, if you emphasize anti-social Trinitarianism, there is horror of horrors, Unitarianism, which to a lot of Christians is just as bad. They're atheists as far as that, you know. So, I mean, this is very complicated. This is one of those things that to explore any of this, we'd need a really hour-long shows, and, you know, it's just very complicated, and involved, which we don't have the time for.
Family Radio spent millions on billboards, 20 RVs. In 2009, it reported in IRS filings that it received $18.3 million in donations, had assets of more than $104 million, including $34 million in stocks or other publicly traded securities. Marie Exley, who helped put up apocalypse-themed billboards in Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon, she must have been popular there,
yeah,
said the money allowed the nonprofit to reach as many souls as possible. I wouldn't use the word reach. Swindle, bamboozle.
But the thing is this. What does that accomplish? I mean, all right, supposing you reach 3 million people more than you would ordinarily had if you hadn't put up the signs. Okay, so what does that mean? So what? If the world's coming to an end, it's coming to an end.
Yeah. Right.
I guess you know, if you confess your sins,
they want you to think like they do. They want you to believe what they believe.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Well, I guess they think that if people confess their sins and get with God, that they will be saved. I like that expression, Jesus saves, Moses invests.
That's always very good. Um, more believers are trying to doomsday gone bad. I like this. Um, Here's another explanation as put out by a counseling psychologist and cult expert by the name of Steve Hassan, who runs the online Freedom of the Mind Resource Center. I'll have to look up that site.
Yeah,
the more people have connections outside of the group, the more likely it is that they're going to stop looking to camping as a mount of God on earth. Information control is one of the most important features of mind control. And camping had these people suckered in. You know, that's the one thing. Madeline Murray O'Hare and also some other sociologists have always talked about the mass movement, how people lose their own personal identity when they become a part of this mass movement. And then that's when they get involved in, what was that, the cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance.
Where they can just separate reality from fact, but yet maintain, in their minds, a rational approach to both.
Well, yeah, I mean, the vast majority of people that buy into this are quite functional in any pragmatic sense, you know.
Right.
Functional human beings, not necessarily stupid. Some of them are really very intelligent, and using a lot of brain power on nonsense.
Before the show started, Dennis and I were talking about this cognitive dissonance, and there was I had just recently at home watched a film that came out in the theaters called Case 39 with Renee Zellweger. It was about a possessed child. And what was funny about it is that she was a city caseworker. And when she started to get the inklings that this child was not quite together, she, of course, got a detective to help investigate the family and the child. So later on, of course, the family, I don't want to give away much of the film, but her mother and father are arrested and taken away for reasons if you decide to see the film. But at one point, about 2/3 into the film now, she's pretty convinced that this young child is possessed. And she's having a discussion with the detective. She waited for him outside church on a Sunday. And he came out of the church, and he's coming down the steps. And she goes to discuss it with him. And she says, you know, we really got to do something because I really think there's something going on with this child. This child may be possessed. Of course, the detective in him says, well, you know, I only deal in realities. And she goes, oh, I see. So you believe in that stuff when you're in that building pointing to the church. But then she goes, but out here in the real world, you don't. Is that what it is? And that really, that really threw him for a loop. But anyway, I mean, this show is like moving along.
Yeah, we're getting thrown for a loop ourselves. You've been watching Atheist Viewpoint. I'm Dennis Horvitz.
I'm Ron Barrier. And make sure to check out our website, www.atheist.org. And check out what we have. If you're a non-believer, if you have doubts about your religious faith, feel free to visit our website. We've all been through it. You know, I went through it, and believe me, if there is one single truth that is out there, it is that atheism is for real. So, again, on that point, Dennis, I'm Ron Barrier. This is the Atheist Viewpoint. We'll see you next week.